This is a Gibson Les Paul, as the words say, and these guitars have a reputation as being heavy, or more accurately, too heavy. And if you look at it, you can understand why. It's a lump of wood, and it's quite a thick lump of wood, and actually most Les Pauls are two lumps of wood. You've got a mahogany body with a maple cap on top, and then of course mahogany neck and whatever material the fretboard is, and it all adds up to being a fairly chunky, heavy guitar. Now, discussion of personal comfort aside, obviously, every guitar has its advocates and its detractors. Some people just don't find the Les Paul very comfortable ergonomically. Some people prefer a Strat or an Explorer, whatever it might be. But issues of personal taste to one side, today I really want to talk about the weight of the Les Paul, and if you find it too heavy to be uncomfortable while you're standing, what that might really be telling you. So, like I said, at first glance you can look at it and think that's a heavy guitar, it's going to be uncomfortable, and if you're holding it for a few hours for a band practice or a show, you're going to get backache and your low back's going to hurt, and just opt for a lighter guitar. Now, it's true to say, first of all, that these can be heavy. Certainly in the 70s, Gibson was on a bit of a mission to use the heaviest wood it could find, and it's not uncommon to find Les Pauls from that era that are in the 11 to 12 pounds category. But generally speaking, you're looking more around 9 to 10 pounds. I couldn't tell you exactly what this one weighs. It's slightly heavier than my 59 reissue, which weighs 8.4. And the 8.4, it feels actually pretty light. It's the first thing you notice when you pick it up off the wall, that it takes less effort to, you pull it off a bit quick because you expect it to be heavier than it was. This is slightly heavier, but it's lighter than my 58 reissue was, and that was about 9.2 pounds. So this is somewhere between 8.4 and 9.2, I think closer to 9. So it's not the lightest thing in the world, that is true. At the same time, it's not the heaviest thing in the world. And to put it into perspective, this is a weight plate from home gym, and as you can see, it weighs 5 kilograms. At 5 kilograms, that means it weighs more than this guitar, and it weighs more than the 58 reissue that I mentioned before. Now, if you walked into a gym, no one's going to pick this up and say that's prohibitively heavy. Okay, yes, it has some weight to it, obviously, but you can see I'm able to move it around quite freely. You can hold it one-handed, you can carry it around very comfortably, and no one's going to say to you, this is too heavy. And yet it weighs more than most Gibson Les Pauls do. So, what's that telling us? First things first, the obvious difference is you're not really putting that around your neck and holding it for hours at a time, like you're probably going to do with your guitar if you are, like I said, rehearsing or performing. But at the same time, that means the weight of this is being distributed across some of the biggest muscles in your in your body, namely your back and your legs and your glutes. So this video is going to get into something of a biology lesson. But hopefully at the end of it, if you want to play Les Paul and you find it uncomfortable, as in you find it too heavy and you ache the next day, then hopefully this video is going to give you some tips to feel more confident about what you can do to make it easier to play. So the first thing is, look at the strap you're using. So the thicker the strap, the more comfortable it should be. If you use a very thin strap and it's got no padding to it, you're putting more pressure really here on your shoulder. So a couple of things to discuss here. One is the type of pain we're talking about. If you're talking about just general, my shoulder aches, look into the type of strap you're using. Get something thicker, ideally something with some padding to just be a bit more comfortable. But primarily I want to talk about a different type of pain, the aches and pains. If you feel it in your low back, you feel like I need to take this guitar off me because it's just too heavy. That might be a symptom of lifestyle. So I want to just preface this by saying I'm talking about otherwise healthy adults. So if you've got an actual physical condition, if you've got an illness, if you have anything that you know actually is the reason that you're feeling the weight of this, or that's keeping you out of the gym or other forms of physical activity, then this doesn't really apply to you. This is only if you're an otherwise healthy adult and you're capable and you've got no health concerns. So that out of the way, the reason I say this could be a matter of lifestyle is, and I know this because I have experienced it myself. Modern society, it's no secret, we spend most of our time sitting down. So we could be talking about, right off the bat, 8 hours a day at the desk working. You might have an hour or two total commute, maybe more, maybe a bit less, but you're probably sitting down for that commute. Then you might come home in the evening and sit in front of the TV. And all of a sudden, most of the day is spent sitting down. I'm sitting down recording this video. There's a good chance you're sitting down watching this video. There's a good chance when you practice guitar, you're sitting down to do it. There's a good chance that you are sitting down when you watch TV, eating dinner. Obviously driving. If you're on a train, unless there's no seats available, most people sit down. We live in a time where we have to consciously make time to stand up and move. So I go for a walk every day, but it's a conscious effort and decision to go for a walk rather than it being built into my day. I go for a walk partly as an exercise routine and partly just because it's an easy way to kind of unwind after a long day. But the point is, it's not baked into most people's days anymore, where you end up racking up your step count just by what you do during the day. Now this has consequences. So the human body being designed to move and then not moving means two things happen. Some parts of the body get too tight and some parts of the body get weaker. And then these two things compound and you get issues. So one of the easiest things you can do to determine this is, physically identify it. Stand in front of a mirror, side on, and just give yourself a real assessment. In an ideal world, actually take pictures, because then you're not turning your head to see. But look in the mirror, side on, and give yourself a quick assessment. So if your head is protruding forward, instead of being straight on your shoulders and your neck, if it's protruding forward, if you've got hunched, rounded shoulders, those are indications from being at a desk and leaning forward, and eventually kind of the shoulders come forward. All this area gets tighter, which pulls you forward into this kind of rounded over position. And then the big telltale for the guitar in particular is the curve in your low back. So if your back is straight down, then you haven't got this. If your back, everyone has a slight S curve. As you into your low back, above your glutes, you've got this slight curve. If that curve is exaggerated in you to the point that you actually notice that, say, the waistline of your underwear or your jeans or whatever you wear, if that's tilted like this, what that means is your pelvis is shifting, which protrudes the belly and it exaggerates that S curve in the back. So this is very common. Like I said, it's something I've been addressing myself. So a lot of people have this. And then what we should be is slightly more neutral, not completely neutral. Like I said, everyone has an S curve to a degree, and it's very normal for women to have a slightly larger one. That's nothing you need to change. And then some people have the opposite, where it's almost like you have no butt at all. Everything's just tucked under. So let's quickly look at what causes this. So if you imagine your pelvis is a bowl, right? And there's 4 hands. You've got a hand on the top and the bottom on each side. So if this is the front of your pelvis, that means this is your abdominal wall and your hip flexors at the front of your leg here. And on the back of the bowl is your low back, and then your hamstrings, the back of your legs. So ideally, the pelvis should be fairly neutral. When you've got when your abs are too strong, so you spend a lot of time doing sit-ups and training your core and not much else, then what can happen is the pelvis shifts this way. So this is your butt essentially, and that tucks under. You don't see an awful lot of this, but you do see it with some people. What's more common is the opposite. So this is your abdominals, your abs, and the front of your legs. It tilts this way. So this now being your butt means this side is where your spine is. Okay, so then you get that dramatic S curve because your butt is sticking way out here. So the cause of this is the abdominal muscles are weaker, which means they start to expand, like extend. The hip flexors at the front of the leg here are tight. So this pelvic bowl, these hip flexors here are pulling on it, right? And this hand up here, which is your abdominals, is weaker. So instead of holding this up, they're letting it drop down, which shifts this up. And then your low back muscles up here are now being strained. And then you've got weaker hamstrings here, which again, they're letting it come up. And incidentally, what happens here is this pulls your hamstrings up. They get longer, which means they stretch. So it's very common that you'll have ache in the back of your hamstrings, the back of your legs rather, in your hamstrings. And you might notice this if you bend down to pick something up, you think, oh, that's tight. And you think, I need to stretch the hamstring because they're tight, they feel tight. Well, really the reason they're tight is because they're being pulled up, which means they're already stretched. So you start a routine where you stretch your hamstrings, you're giving even more room for this pelvic bowl to keep going this way, further exacerbating the problem. So what happens here? So we spend all of our time sitting down, these muscles are getting weaker, these muscles are getting tighter. You then pick up a guitar or you pick up anything. Like you can get this just carrying your grocery shopping. What ends up happening is the wrong muscles do the task. So you have muscles doing things they were never designed to do, and unsurprisingly, it hurts. So when everything's working normally and the pelvis, all four hands are in the correct place and they know what they do, you pick up weights and you strap it around your shoulders and whatever, you pick up the grocery bags, the right muscles do the work. When that's not the case, the wrong muscles do the work. So specifically what's very common and the reason we get so much low back pain, and again, I'm not talking about people who have physical conditions and reasons for, you specifically may have back pain for another reason, but generally speaking, when it's the result of this posture problem. So you've got that curve in your back, the glute muscles are weaker, the ab muscles are weaker, your hips are too tight, your low back ends up taking on all this extra work and supporting it. So normally what would happen is when you're standing straight, your low back's pretty much out of the equation. It's not really involved in holding you up. But if you pay attention to how you might be standing in a queue somewhere, you might notice that actually you slouch while standing. It's very common. And that's your glutes are kind of switched off and allowing you to do that. And you won't remove the pain straight away, but you can very quickly, almost immediately identify some of the trouble areas for you. So if you're standing in that queue and you slouch, just clench your butt cheeks and you'll probably feel that you straight away stand up a bit straighter. So bring this all back to the guitar. If you're standing up and you haven't got the correct posture and your pelvis is out of whack because muscles that should be strong are weak and other muscles that should be quite relaxed are really tight, you're spending 4 hours, let's say that's how long your band practice is, or 1 or 2 hours on stage, loading up the low back with weight that it's not designed to have. So the problem isn't that this guitar is too heavy. The problem is that your body's not currently in condition to adequately support it. Now, on the one hand, you might respond to that and say, okay, well, great, that guitar's too heavy, I don't want to overload my low back, I'll play something else. And fair enough, you can do that, and that might be the appropriate decision in the short term. But the consideration you want to have is actually if the guitar or whatever else is that you're holding is telling you your body's out of whack, guitar or not, you should address that problem because it's only going to get worse. As that gets worse, and you may already notice this, just day-to-day low back pain, you'll be, for no apparent reason that you can think of, you will have an ache down here. Sometimes it throbs, and sometimes it's just really consistent and you can't shift it, and of course you start bending over and twisting and stretching, and you might get some temporary relief, but it's not going anywhere. And the reason it's not going anywhere is because the problem isn't in your low back. Your low back isn't aching because it's tight and needs stretching out. It's aching because it's doing too much work. So you can stretch it all day long. Until you address the other muscles in the body, it won't make any difference. Until your core is strong enough to hold a certain amount of load, the low back's going to keep doing it. Until your glutes and your legs are used to supporting and holding that weight, your low back's going to be doing it. So the guitar might just be a warning to you that your body needs some addressing. Again, you know, I'm talking in generalities here. These are very common causes, the sitting down all the time, and very common consequences, the tightness. It may not be that you specifically have that, but you can still be getting the same warning. So if you're holding the guitar and you're feeling aches in places that you feel you shouldn't have them, or you just think, God, this guitar's too heavy, it's causing pain, you might want to assess yourself. Now, of course, it's difficult to just, if you've never looked at this before and you don't know what you're looking for, it's very difficult for you to look in the mirror and give yourself an honest, objective assessment because you don't know what you're looking for. So my recommendation is find a good physio. You don't even necessarily need them to do physical treatment on you, but if you find a physio who can give you an assessment, and they'll look at you from all angles and they'll say, yep, this muscle's weak, this is tight, this needs releasing, here's a little routine for you to go away and do at home. It can work wonders for you. And I think this is important because my biased opinion is I love the Les Paul, and I don't like to see it put to one side because people think it's just too heavy for them. On the other hand, I think it's really important because at the end of the day, it's your body and it's your health, and we can get away with some things for so long, but eventually these things catch up with us, and if we're allowing our bodies to weaken and tighten and stop functioning as they're supposed to, there's a time in the future when that'll catch up to you, and that can manifest in various different ways. But for a lot of people that means surgical interventions, it means a lot of painkillers, medication. It might mean surgery for hips and your back, and things that, you know, if these things can be prevented with some very simple and not very time consuming at-home exercises, for me personally, I think that's all day long worth the effort. And then being able to play the guitars you want to play is a bonus to that. But I like to put it in the context of this, because I think it hammers home how much weight we're really talking about. Because this is more than the guitar, and this is only 5 kilograms. So I think when we start to put things in relative terms, it clarifies. So you can say, oh, that guitar's heavy, that guitar's 10 pounds. Yeah, okay, that guitar's 10 pounds and that's heavy. But actually, if you pick up something else that weighs more than that, that's not heavy. So I think it's important to remember too that when we talk about guitars being heavy, we're really talking in relative terms. It's heavy for a guitar. It's not heavy. Especially when it's supposed to be supported by the biggest, strongest muscles in the body. So I'll wrap this up here. I'm not going to start giving out routines for everyone, because like I said, your specific reason might be a bit different, and I recommend going to see a professional and have them give you a visual assessment. But if you do notice in the mirror that your waistband sits this way, so your stomach sticks out a bit and your butt sticks out a bit and you've kind of got this shape, generally speaking, what you want to do is strengthen the core, stretch the hip flexors, and strengthen your backside, so your glutes, and stretch the hamstrings, to strengthen the hamstrings. That will help to rebalance your pelvis, and that will help to remove the pressure off your low back. And just, if you're not familiar with the anatomy of this, the way this works is your hip flexors here at the front of they run at the front of your leg around the hips, as the name suggests, but they then wrap around the back of your pelvis. So as they tighten at the front and they shift it, they pull everything forward, that puts direct pressure on your low back. It's all being contracted in this way. So you'll have the low back pain with or without lifting things, depending on how severe it is for you. So generally speaking, if you know you've got this and you can see it in the mirror and you can feel it in your back, and you're aware that you sit down a lot and maybe you're not, following any gym program, there's a pretty good chance that this is what you need to work on. So work on strengthening the abs, stretching the hip flexors, and strengthening your glutes. And we're not talking hours a day. You can do this in minutes a day. Just incorporate, you can start by doing basic planks for 30 seconds, 1 or 2 sets. You can do the couch stretch, where you just literally put a knee on the floor, so your foot's up here, and then your other leg is sort of in a lunge position, and then you'll feel that stretch on the leg that's supporting against the couch. Then swap sides. And then you can do some simple glute bridges on your back. Just squeeze your butt and lift it up. We're talking simple exercises. You don't need gym equipment, you don't need to leave your house. And it's not an overnight fix, it takes time, but the idea is that you're getting these muscles used to doing what they're supposed to be doing again. And that takes an awful lot of pressure off your low back. It restores your body's posture to where it's supposed to be. The right muscles do the right thing. And then before you know it, you can play the guitar you want to play, not the guitars that you feel you've been resigned to play in because they don't weigh as much. So as always, I hope this helps. I hope this gives some of you some clarity on why you're feeling the aches and pains that you have and how to address them. And I hope we see some more Les Paul players out of this.